Mr. Mayor, is Jeanette still there, please?
She should be, Councillor Rush.
And
Can I
can she
help
hear
you?
me?
I can
I'm
hear you.
fine. Are you okay?
I am very good, Councillor Rush. Thank you. I
Good,
can hear
good.
you properly.
I wonder if Jeanette could just come to the screen or speak to me really directly.
Janet, are you there? Can you please show us your self and talk to Councillor Rush? He would like to talk to you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was just getting
That's
Sorry.
fine.
was launched on YouTube.
Thank you. Just Councillor Rush would like to talk to you.
Hello, Jeanette, can you hear me?
Right, we are now live on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yes, I
forget
can.
that.
Councillor Rush. Yeah,
I
we're live on
wondered
YouTube now.
if you could send me a copy of the second question I sent you. I seem to have mislaid it. Thank you. Or I will withdraw it, Jeanette. That's probably better. Can I withdraw my second question?
Certainly, Councillor Rush, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you are live on YouTube.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Janet. Good evening, councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this virtual meeting of the full council. Before I will start this meeting, I would just like, on behalf of the council and all councillors, to thank Janet Collier for her hard work and her devotion to her job. As it will be her last full council meetings before her retirement. So I really thank Janet, and on behalf of you, for being here for us and helping us and being good to us. It was a joy to work with you, Janet. It was always a pleasure to talk to you, and it was always a pleasure to ask you questions. And you never say no. You always have been there for us. I really thank you on behalf of the council for that work. And really, we would love to replace you with somebody who can match your characters and your devotion and your hard work.
Wow.
Once again, I will hope that you will be enjoying your retirement away from us, and you take the headache of these councillors away. So I will hope that you will enjoy it. Many thanks for your hard work, Janet. You've been a good friend. You've been a good officer. You've been a very good a colleague of ours. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's really taken me by surprise. And yeah, that's great. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you. The pleasure
I just
is ours.
hope I don't let you down tonight.
No, you'll be okay. Thank you. The pleasure is ours. Thank you. Now, could I now ask that a roll call be taken so that the public viewing this meeting know who is attending? Please, Janet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll call out members' names alphabetically if you could indicate your presence. Councillor Tracy Abbott.
Present.
Councillor Tom Ashton.
Present.
Councillor Alison Austin.
Present.
Councillor Richard Austin.
Present.
Councillor Peter Bedford.
Present.
Councillor Alan Bell.
Present.
Councillor Michael Cooper.
Present.
Councillor George Corner.
Present.
Councillor Anton Danner, yourself, Mr. Mayor. Clearly present.
Yes.
Councillor Anne Dorian.
Present.
Councillor Deborah Evans.
Present.
Councillor Paul Goodale.
Present.
Councillor Martin Griggs.
Present.
Councillor Neil Hasty.
Present.
Councillor Martin Howard.
Present.
Councillor Jonathan Noble.
Present.
Councillor Frank Pickett.
Present.
Councillor Brian Rush.
Present, Janet.
Councillor Judith Skinner.
Present.
Councillor Paul Skinner.
Present.
Councillor Chelsea Trafford.
Present.
Councillor Aaron Spencer. Councillor Spencer. Not present. Councillor Yvonne Stevens.
Present.
Councillor Peter Watson.
Present.
Councillor Judith Wellborn.
Present.
Councillor Nigel Welton.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Woodliffe.
Present.
Also, Mr. Mayor, I'll ask the officers present to indicate they are here. The Chief Executive, Rob Barlow.
Present, Jeanette.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Executive for Police and Monitoring Officer Michelle Sachs.
Present. Oh, sorry. Present. Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Executive People, Alison Penn.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Section 151 Officer Adrian Sibley.
Present.
Assistant Director for Support Services and Partnerships, Phil Perry.
Present, Jeanette.
Thank you. James Gilbert, I'm not sure if Mr. Gilbert is present. Mrs. Riesling, Lydia Riesling, I'm not sure if Mrs. Riesling's present. The Licensing and Land Charges Manager, Fiona White.
Present.
The Council Tax and Benefits Manager, Gemma Creasy.
Present.
And myself, Mr. Mayor, Senior Democratic Services Officer. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you. Now we're going to move to part one of this meeting, which is the preliminaries. Have I the council's permission to sign the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 26th of October 2020? Yes. Thank you. If members have any comments or questions on the accuracy of the minute, please use the raise hands facility. If there are no comments, I will assume you're all in agreement for me to sign the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Dorian and Councillor Rush are indicating.
Sure, I will go to them. Can you bring me, please, Councillor Dorian first?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, under point 3, Mr. Mayor, of the minutes of the last meeting, that's when Councillor Woodliff fed back to full council on behalf of the Corporate and Community Scrutiny Committee, and he fed back as chairman of that committee. Now he got stopped during his feedback during his presentation under the 5-minute rule, and I did ask for a point of information on that, and the monitoring officer said that she would come back and let us know, but I've not received anything to date.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can come in
Thank
then
you, yes.
and assist with Councillor Dorian. Apologies, Councillor Dorian. There is no provision in the Constitution that allows any other chairman longer than 5 minutes. So it was a correct interjection by Jeanette to ask Councillor Woodliff to finish his 5-minute speech there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Thank you. Can we have Councillor Rush, please?
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I cannot see you.
And it's just, Mr. Mayor, it's a reference to page 2 on the minutes of the last meeting, or at least the 26th of October meeting, where my name has been taken in page 2 on the last paragraph in heavy text. I presume it's supposed to have been Mr. Rago, instead of which it is named as Councillor Rush. I can manage my own problems without adopting someone else's, sir, if you take that as a tongue-in-cheek remark.
No, thank you very much for the remark. It makes sense. So
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It will be sorted out. Thank you very much, Councillor Rush. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? No. So we agree. So I will sign the minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any apologies?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors. We have 2 recorded apologies from councillors David Brown and Vivian Edge.
Thank you. Rob, are there any communications?
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Are there any questions from members of the council?
There are, Mr. Mayor. We have a question from Councillor Stephen Woodliff. We have a question from Councillor Brian Rush, a question from Councillor Peter Bedford, a question from Councillor Peter Watson, and 2 questions from Councillor Anne Dorian.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. So, Councillor Woodliff, would you ask your question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're more than welcome, Peter.
Thank you. My question is for the Leader of the Council, Councillor Paul Skinner. Pursuant to I think it's Rule 11 of the Council's Rule of Procedure. What advice and guidance have you given or intend to give to the Mayor, Councillor Anton Denny, regarding his revelation in the CNC overview and scrutiny meeting on Thursday, the 12th of November, that he intends to be at Boston, Massachusetts, in his official capacity with the chains of office, but apparently at his own expense?
Thank you, Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you.
Councillor Paul Skinner, would you like to answer the question? Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Woodruff. I'm sure Councillor Woodruff would agree with me the position of Mayor of our town is a very special honour received by members of this council. I applaud the enthusiasm of our current Mayor, who under these unusual circumstances has served longer than most. If the Mayor is on an official mission or under of official capacity and the rules of this council are followed, then a Mayor would be permitted to travel with an element of sponsorship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Skinner. Councillor Woodliff, have you got a supplementary question, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I want to first thank Councillor Skinner for his reply. My second question is this, as supplementary.
Yes.
Councillor Skinner, as you know, there have been a number of occasions when the Mayor, Councillor Anton Denny, has been somewhat injudicious in his choice of language. Indeed, as you should know, I had occasion to write to you on the 3rd of September to express my concern at the comments made by Councillor Denny at the CNC meeting on the 27th of August, which can best be described as an unbridled and unjustified rant against the officers of the council. Also, we are aware of the comments made in public targeting the travelling community. Now, ill-conceived remarks are inappropriate in any context, but when such statements flow from the mouth of the Mayor, Boston's first citizen, then the damage to Boston's reputation is incalculable. So, Councillor Skinner, what action plan, what training scheme do you have in mind to curb the Mayor's indulgences, actually? Over to you, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Councillor Woodruff. You should know that I'm very keen on training and development of all of the councillors, and I'm sure that we can put together a way of training us all in the future. It is so easy to get carried away with oneself, and I am sure that the Mayor didn't do it intentionally. He is a very passionate man. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Woodliff, and thank you, Councillor Skinner. Thank you. Councillor Rush, would you like to ask your first question, which is only one question you have now? Question, please.
Mr. Mayor, I do apologise. In fact, I have found the other questions. So my kind regards to Jeanette for being so quick, for answering my response quickly. I will start with my first question, and I do have a second, sir. So here we go.
You're going to proceed with the second question as well, yeah?
The second is active again. I have, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you can go with your first question, Councillor Rush.
Okay. This is to Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott, you wrote to me recently expressing similar concern as I had regarding the whereabouts of 25 number, 4 metres by 5 metres, yellow and blue market stall structures purchased in 2009. What further information have you now discovered?
Councillor Tracy Abbott, would you like to answer the question, please?
Can you hear? Yeah. Thank you for your question. Apparently the council purchased pop-up gazebos to replace the stalls that was on the Bargate Green Market. But in 2015-16, they reverted back to the standard stalls because as a gazebo pop-up type were not fit for purpose. The gazebos are much lighter in construction and than the traditional market stalls, and they provided not to be robust in the windy conditions. A number of these stalls were then damaged. After being put up and down for several weeks continually, they suffered major damage. Whilst the broken gazebos were initially used to replace parts of the other gazebos, this is no longer able to be done. There is one gazebo still available for use, which is used for events only on the occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tracy Abbott. Councillor Rush, would you like to ask your supplementary question, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And thanks to Councillor Abbott for being so succinct with her response. However, I'm a little concerned about her response because I actually met with Councillor Abbott some time back, and she did tell me that that I was investigating the same thing as she was for some reason. I didn't have any conversation with her before. However, what she hasn't mentioned, and this is very important, and I don't blame any of the Conservative people that are in post at the moment, but did she know that over £50,000 of ratepayers' money was squandered on these pop-up stalls and their transportation elements? £50,000 of Boston Borough Council ratepayers' money, and yet there is no sign of where they are, and no sign of any receipts talking about metal recycling, which for those amount of stands, I believe would be quite lucrative. Can I ask Councillor Abbott if she is prepared to seek a scrutiny committee meeting regarding this specific item, which is headed the Bargate Green Cooperative Group, and I want her to find out how much money was spent on that project, because we have had these stands. We've also had trailers. There's been an enormous amount of money spent, and I believe it needs to be scrutinised by the members of this council. Mr. Mayor, I leave that with you, and I ask Councillor Abbott if she can respond now as to whether she is prepared to do that on behalf of this council.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Councillor Abbott, would you like to respond to the question of Councillor Rush?
Thank you for your supplementary. I don't recall meeting yourself for previously. I do apologise. If you can let me have the information you hold on all of this, I can most definitely look into it for you and see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor Abbott. Actually, Councillor Abbott, we didn't meet. You wrote to me. I have a copy of your letter. So you made the first approach, not me. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, for breaking the protocol. Thank you very much.
But that's
thank Councillor Abbott for a response.
But that's all right, Councillor Rush, for clarifying the situation. That's all right. I do believe, Councillor Rush, you have a second question. Can you please ask your second question?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm a little nonplussed with these buttons. So, okay. So this question is to Councillor Skinner. I assume that you will have been an adjudicator on what is known as a senior officer employment panel. This is an occasion when specific senior post becomes vacant and a cross-section of elected members are chosen to evaluate the applicant's credentials. Do you consider that the process that this council has relied upon for so long can still be considered fit for purpose? Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Skinner, would you like?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
It has been. I totally agree with it. Has been changed completely. The questions.
Yes,
it's not the same question which is I was presented with, and it's quite different now because the first question is different. Councillor Rush.
If I may interject, Mr. Mayor, that was the point I was going to be making.
Yes.
If Councillor Rush has just read a question out, that is very different from the question that was submitted. and therefore is not the question that the leader has been able to consider. And therefore, I don't believe it's appropriate for that question to be submitted, to be taken forward tonight, and will need to be resubmitted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Councillor Rush.
Okay, I do apologise for that, and you will know there was a little bit of confusion earlier on because I was handed the papers with this question on, and I apologise to Ms Sachs as well for reading out the wrong question. There has been a number of questions on pieces of paper for me. This one I thought was the right one, so I take it back. I will not be presenting it, and I do apologise to Councillor Skinner for confusing him.
Apologies accepted for you.
So you withdraw the question, basically, Councillor Rush. Is that correct?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Thank you. So now we go to Councillor Bedford. Please, can you ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Councillor Yvonne Stevens. As this will be the last week of the brown bin collections, could you please furnish us all with the outturn numbers of householders who did not renew their payments this year? And is this the reason for increased fly tips in garden waste?
Thank you, Councillor Bedford. Councillor Stevens, would you like to respond to Councillor Bedford's question, please?
Oh, well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedford, for your question. In 2019-2020, we had 12,453 subscribers to the garden waste collection service. And in 2020-21, we have 11,621. Although fly tips of garden waste have increased from April to October, when compared to the same period compared with last year, it only accounts for 3% of the number of fly tips collected. The 140% increase in fly tips seen over this period is primarily due to black bagged waste and other household waste, furniture, mattresses, wood, toys, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Bedford, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Indeed, I do, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Stevens for her answer. When the last current or this year's budget 2021 was voted through, I asked the then finance portfolio holder, Councillor Martin Howard, if there would be a price lock on brown bins, as there was quite a large increase for 4 years, to which I did not get an answer and still haven't. And he informed me he was instructed by the leader of the council not to answer any questions. So can you, Councillor Stevens, as portfolio holder, please confirm that you would support that there will be no further increases in the coming 3 years for this excellent but slightly overpriced service, as a 15% loss of the use of the bins has proven? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedford. Councillor Stevens, would you like to respond to the question of Councillor Bedford, please?
I would.
Thank you.
Councillor Bedford, I would like to say I totally support you. But until I've got my head around it with the officers concerned, I'm not able to do that, which I know you'll appreciate. So if you'll please bear with me, and I will make sure that you get a written response to your question, if that's okay with you, Councillor Bedford.
Well, obviously I prefer a verbal one on the night so the public can hear, but if
Yes.
that is the only answer, then yes, obviously I'll accept it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens, and thank you, Councillor Bedford. Now we go to Councillor Watson, please, would you like to ask your question?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
My question is again to Councillor Yvonne Stevens, Portfolio for Environmental Services. And I have to say, while COVID-19 has changed the way we all have to operate, there's been a very large increase in fly tipping offences around the borough that are being reported every day. Is this council currently seeing any reduction of such offences? And if not, why, after having 8 months of this, are we not seeing an improvement with this diabolical situation? And what action has been taken to at least reduce this disgusting plague of fly tipping? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Stevens, would you like to respond to Councillor Watson, please?
I would. Councillor Watson, thank you for your question. Firstly, on a very personal note, this situation of fly tip, it galls me tremendously. But in answer to your question, although we've seen a small reduction in fly tips in October, 253 compared to 268 in September, the trend since March is showing fly tipping numbers increasing across our area, across our area. And this is being seen in many other areas across the country. So it's not specifically Boston, it's everywhere. To address this increase, we have endeavoured to raise awareness of responsible waste disposal and also of the enforcement powers available to the council. Environmental crime leaflets aimed at reducing fly tipping were sent out to all households in the borough at the start of lockdown. And over recent months, the council has installed mobile CCTV in 2 hotspot locations. We've taken part in 2 radio interviews, participated in a feature on Look North, and been featured in a TV programme, Rip Off Britain, all with positive coverage. On Facebook alone, 67 posts have been made relating to fly tipping, with an estimated total over 361,000 people. In addition, these messages have been pushed out on Twitter and Instagram. As a result of this awareness raising activity, local media have published additional messages, and through this period, the council has also continued to issue 6 penalty notices for fly tipping. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Watson, have you got a supplementary question?
Indeed, Mr. Mayor, I have. And
thank you,
thank you, Councillor Yvonne Stevens, for your reply. And I have to say, all credit to the officers and employees of this council for all their efforts with dealing with this problem. However, having recently attended an inquiry evening regarding our Boston Waste Recycling Facility, and having listened to what I believe is excuse after excuse for this facility not being able to accept all types of waste every day for customers, that the facility, I believe, is not fit for purpose, I must ask, has Councillor Stevens, as portfolio holder, expressed her outrage that this facility is possibly one of the major indirect contributing factors to scourge of fly tipping that is costing this council and its council taxpayers so much? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Stevens, would you like to come back and answer the supplementary question, please?
I would. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Well, with relation, I'm going to call it the tip. It's fondly known as the tip. I'm going to speak from personal experience here. I had garden waste and I thought, right, Yvonne, book it in. So I went to book it in I struggled. I realise now it was operator error. But even for people who have operator error, on the end of the telephone, there was a really kind lady who helped me through the maze, booked my appointment, and I delivered my garden waste at the appropriate time and date. Since then, I've booked it online. I found it when I knew what I was doing. When I booked it online twice, I've taken garden waste to the tip. I don't see your issue, Councillor Watson, because if I can do it, and I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to computers, and if people are more of a dinosaur than me, there's a telephone. It's simple. And if you've got garden waste and you've got a certain other types of waste, you book it in on the day when you can take it all. And if you are familiar with the tip, then you put probably your electrical things at the back and your garden waste at the front, which is ever the easiest to get out. So I really don't take on board what you're saying, because having done it myself, I struggled first time. I think with a bit of patience and the will to do it, then I think we can continue using it. But there has also been a COVID issue, and the tip was closed last Sunday because Mr. Mayor made me aware of that. But it is through a COVID issue. Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens, and I hope that you're satisfied with that, Councillor Watson. Now thank you, Councillor Watson. Now we're going to go to Councillor Dorian. I do believe you have two questions. Would you like to ask your first question, please, Councillor Dorian?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This
is to Councillor Noble, the finance portfolio holder. Please provide an updated estimate of the savings required for this financial year and next financial year, and specify which areas of growth or cuts that you've identified in order to balance the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Councillor Noble, would you like to answer the question from Councillor Dorian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I will. Thank you for your question, Councillor Dorian. I'm pleased you're taking such a keen interest in the borough's financial affairs. The answer to your first question is this. In terms of the current year, in order to balance the budget, £500,000 of transformation savings were identified as part of last year's budget setting process. As a result of COVID, the latest position being reported to Cabinet is that we have pressures that total approximately £1.8 million. Having now received 4 tranches of government funding that total around £1.2 million, we have a predicted deficit on the budget of £600,000. We are, though, expecting a further grant towards the end of this month for around £425,000. So this figure should reduce to around £175,000. Whilst this is a very positive outcome in view of the pressures that COVID has caused, it does not take into account the effect of the current lockdown, which cannot be accurately quantified at this stage. For next year, the identified gap is around 900,000. In order to bridge the gap, it is expected that savings from the Strategic Management Alliance will total around 400,000, and that the delay in the fair funding review will defer an expected reduction of 500,000 of government funding until 2022-23. The Council has the option of engaging with PSPS, and if this option is taken up, it has the possibility of leading to significant savings for the Council. This, though, is reliant on member support from all parties. I would also like to stress that the significant risk to all of this and our finances generally is the government funding announcements that we are expecting in the next month or so.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Councillor Dorian, would you like to come with your supplementary question, please?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Thank you for that answer, Councillor Noble. And I know that you are on top of the finances and that you can add up. But this is your government that you're talking about. You're a Conservative councillor, Councillor Noble. You represent the Conservative Party. You're an apologist for the Conservative Party. And I'd like to know when you're going to stop making excuses for the 10 years of austerity that we've had. I've done some research. 2020, local councils have now lost 60 pence in a pound to where they were in 2010. So what my question is when are you going to start lobbying government to give us a fair settlement, to stop slashing and burning? Because the PSPS thing, if you go down that route after the Strategic Alliance and gave us the way to Skegness, it's going to be a case of last one out, turn out the lights. There'll be nothing left.
Thank you, Councillor Doran. There's a lot in that 10 questions. I'll try to take it one thing at a time. You mentioned PSPS. Now, we've already had a briefing regarding PSPS, and it will be a matter for all councillors on mature reflection when they've considered all the incidents, whether we should choose to engage with them. So I'm not going to really comment on that because it would be premature to do so. The only thing I will say is that under PSPS, they have their separate system of payments. It's not as is at present with the council. And given that in terms of council spending, between 80 and 90% goes on wages and pay, if savings could be made in that way, that might be something the council would want to consider, but we don't know. Now, you also said that I'm a representative of the Conservative Party. That is true. You also said I'm an apologist for the Conservative Party, and that's by no means the case. The Conservative Party is a broad church. We have many different shades of opinion. As you know, I personally am probably on what we would consider on the right of the party, and as regards 10 years austerity, I think the whole austerity thing was a complete misnomer. In fact, government spending continued to go up year on year during the so-called austerity years. But I think you're underestimating the amount of help they've had from the government. I did say, when we were talking about the Strategic Alliance months ago, that the economic damage inflicted on this town by what is now 2 lockdowns would be amply compensated for by the central government. And that has been the case. Now, I'm going to give you some examples. For example, we have received 5,311,000 in Section 31 monies from central government. From the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, we have had COVID-19 receipts totaling 1,185,000 in 4 tranches. I'd also like to point out the government has supplied 1,245 local businesses with business grants totaling 14,430,000. So I think that although one might argue, has the government's approach towards the COVID epidemic been correct, there is no doubt that we have been amply and rightly compensated by central government for all the financial difficulties that we may have encountered. Now, looking to the future, you asked in your question about areas for potential growth. Before I do that, I'm just going to also talk to you about the reserves, because I sent you an email on the 9th of November where I told you the state of the reserves, which are very healthy. And for the benefit of people who are not familiar with the council, I'll go over those. The earmark reserves are 13,349,000. We have total usable reserves of 16,507,000. We have total council reserves of 22,267,000, and we have unusable reserves of 5,760,000. So there is plenty of money in the reserves, but obviously we are hoping not to have to use any of the reserves money. And that takes me back to the point about potential growth. Now, my view, I think that as we now have the vaccines about to come on stream, there's 3 different types of vaccine, as we know, I think the economic situation is going to improve. I think our business rates will increase next year. I think our fees and charges will increase next year. I think we're going to get more from parking, because the issue of free parking will naturally be reviewed fairly soon. I think the crematorium will continue to make good money for the council. Our new cremator is scheduled to come onto service on the 16th of December. Planning, I anticipate more money coming from planning, because we're going to see more house building and more house sales, and that will be more council tax income for this council. We'll also would aim to, I hope, to get more money from building control, And as regards leisure, which obviously has taken a hit, we now know that even under tier 3 restrictions, gyms will be able to stay open. So my message to you, Councillor Dorian, in summation is there have been difficult times. We've been amply compensated by the government, and we're looking to a more positive future. And I think we all do what we're asked to do, which is keep our distance, wear the mask, and for precautions, we should aim to get back to normal as soon as possible. Thank you, Councillor Dorian.
Thank you,
Thank you, Councillor Noble. You answered a lot of questions there, but none of them were mine. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Noble.
Point of personal explanation. Well, no, I made note of what Councillor Dorian said. She said I was a representative of the Conservative Party. True. And apologies for it. Not true. She said there have been 10 years of austerity. I took issue with that. And as regards to local government funding, I've tried to point out that the government has been very generous to this council in the last few months. That's all I'll say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dorian.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Thank you, Councillor Noble. Thank you. Councillor Dorian, please, would you ask your second question, please?
Thank you. Yeah, this question's to Councillor Paul Skinner. A key element of performance improvement is communication, especially with residents of the Borough of Boston. What plans do you have, if any, to develop the current communication strategy?
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Councillor Paul Skinner, would you like to answer, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Dorian. The council places a great importance on its communication with residents, stakeholders and its workforce. Since the Alliance was formed, we've developed a single communication service for both councils, giving more resilience and focus to our communications activity. This has been particularly helpful given our communications team has been a key part to our response during COVID-19. Our teams continue to identify and exploit any new means to engage our audiences. And as a result of our strategy, it's continuing evolving and developing in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Skinner. Councillor Dorian, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for that response, Councillor Skinner. I'm delighted to hear that the council places a great importance on its communication with residents, stakeholders and the workforce. However, I'm extremely sad to say that's not my experience, especially with you, Councillor Skinner. The people of Skirbeck elected me to represent them to the best of my ability. They expect me to look out for them, to be cognizant of all the issues that are current and to hold you and the administration to account. So in that regard, in the last 3 months or so, 3.5 months, I've written to you about 5 different topics, or concerning 5 different topics, and I've received a partial response to only 2. And in total, Councillor Skinner, I've written to you 17 times to remind you that I am still waiting for a response. I've received no reply. So please explain to me why you're ignoring me and all the residents of Skirbeck on whose behalf I'm writing to you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Councillor Paul Skinner, would you like to come and answer the question, please?
Well, it's one perception at least anyway. I do weekly updates and there's one message goes to staff, to the residents and to the councillors. And on the occasion that a subject within the emails that Councillor Dorian sends isn't included on any of those, I actually write back to her because they are in the briefings. We've had membership briefings to update people.
No.
But what we've got is, you know, all the regular internal briefings that discuss all the key issues with workforces and councillors, regular meetings to briefings to secure coverage for the work of the council. You know, all this information's there. There's been briefings all the way along, should people want to attend. And when they don't attend, actually now, using modern technology, we actually record it and send to people. So there won't be any reason for anybody not to pick anything up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Port Skinner, and thank you, Councillor Dorian.
I've never written to you about anything I could find anywhere else. So I'll make my emails public and I'll let the public decide for themselves.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian.
Excuse
for
me, Mr.
the
Mayor,
point.
will that be as a Scuba Independent, a member of BIG, or Independence too? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner, and thank you, Councillor Dorian. Are there any questions from members of the public?
Mr. Mayor, there's one question from Mr. Darren Abbott.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barlow. In accordance with the procedures rules for remote meetings, I will read Mr. Abbott's question to the meeting, which is directed to Councillor Yvonne Stevens. Recently, Boston Borough Council publicized that since September 2019, the fact that they had issued 836 fixed penalties notices for fly tipping. I know of one individual that has been reported for fly tipping on 5 separate occasions. One of those reports being made by a portfolio holder. These reports have been supported by evidence. I attached a letter from Christian Allen dated 5th of June 2020 that confirms the actions of this individual was fly tipping, but no action would be taken as it occurred during the first lockdown. The incidents have continued and have been reported, but no action has been taken. Councillor Stevens, perhaps you would like to explain to everyone why Boston Borough Council are selective in issuing of penalties, and how do we all avail ourselves to this special treatment? Thank you. And is to you, Councillor Stevens, to answer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Abbott, for your question. The letter you refer to sets out the council's position in June during the first lockdown. And although the council has limited enforcement capacity, the fly SWAT crew continued to collect fly tip and retained any evidence they found within these fly tips to enable enforcement action to be taken at a later date. The very nature of green waste is not hazardous, and as green waste fly tips are highly unlikely to contain evidence of the perpetrator, the priority for the reduced team was to collect crucibles waste and other wastes blocking pavement, for example, that were obviously hazardous to public health. You have provided information on alleged fly tipping of green waste and rubble at Garfitts Lane, and responses have been provided to you. For clarity, these incidents have been investigated, but officers have been unable to determine who had fly tipped green waste. Appropriate action has been taken as far as possible. I would ask anyone if they have tangible evidence of a fly tipper, such as witness statement, where the fly tipper event has been witnessed, where the fly tipping event has been witnessed, or car number plate, then please send that information to flyswat@boston.gov.uk. This will be acted upon. I'm sure you will agree that the council has an exemplary record in both enforcement against fly tippers and in the speed of removal of fly tips. Thank you, Mr. Abbott.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I've been presented with the supplementary question, which is I will read for you on behalf of Councillor Abbott, of Mr. Darren Abbott. Okay. I thank Councillor Stevens' answer. I would have, it would have been nice if she had actually answered the question herself rather than taking the officer's report. Between brackets, I know how this works. If she had looked into the matter herself, she would know the evidence had been provided and all on investigating officer would have been given by myself and her fellow cabinet member. I ask Councillor Stevens, is this a case of who you are depends on whether you get penalized? Thank you. Is that clear for you, Councillor Stevens?
Well, I do have it written down, but I did have to scratch my head. But yes, I understand.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott, for your supplementary question. I can confirm that it is not the case of who you are. The case of who you are depends on whether you get penalised. All reports of alleged fly tip where there is evidence are investigated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Councillor Alison Austin is indicating.
Yes, I seen her hand. I will come to her. Thank you. Can we have Councillor Austin, Alison Austin, please, to the screen?
I had noticed, Mr. Mayor, that there is, although one person has now turned his video off, that there are a number of councillors who weren't speaking who are still showing their video. And we're getting to the stage now where we're getting feedback occasionally, or the sound isn't good. And we are requested, aren't we, unless we are actually speaking, to keep our video, obviously not Mr. Mayor, you yourself, and the officer are concerned, but we are asked, to, if possible, to keep our video and audio off, aren't we? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin, Alison Austin. I can see only Councillor Wellborn, her microphone is on, and Councillor Rush. If you can mute your microphones, that will be appreciated. Thank you, Councillor Rush, and thank you, Councillor Wellborn. I don't think so we're going to have any more, hopefully everybody. Okay, thank you. Now I will inquire whether any members wish to declare any interest in respect of any items on the agenda. I think there is nobody, there is no hands. Is that correct, Janet?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. Nobody's indicating. Thank you.
Then we're going to move to part 2, agenda items. We now move to the agenda items, and I call upon the monitoring officer to introduce a report on the appointments deferred from the council meeting on the 26th of October 2020. Michelle Sachs, please.
Many thanks, Mr. Mayor. Members will recall that the guillotine fell at the end of the last council meeting, and we had 3 items that we were not considered and voted upon. And they were the appointment of the chairman to the Environment and Performance Committee, the vice chairman to the Planning Committee, and membership to the Black Sluice Internal Drainage Board. Therefore, tonight, Mr. Mayor, members are asked to consider and vote upon these appointments. If I may assist, the first 2 appointments to which I've referred, the chairman of the E&P committee and the vice chair of the planning committee, as of this time, we only have 2 nominations for each post. And those are Councillor Judith Skinner and Councillor Anne Dorian for the chairman of the E&P committee, and Councillor Alison Austin and Councillor Peter Watson for the position of vice chairman of the planning committee. Could I ask if there are any further nominations tonight? Okay, I can't see any hands and no one's indicated to Mr. Mayor or Jeanette. In that case, may I suggest to full council that the most expedient way of finalising and determining the 2 committee appointments is as follows. Because there are 2 names put forward for each post, if a straightforward proposal was given, there would potentially be an amendment proposed to replace the named person with the other candidate. That would instantly negate the original motion, and therefore that would not be a sufficient amendment. And therefore, to allow each candidate for those two positions to be able to have maximum opportunity to succeed to those roles, I would propose, or also I would suggest, that council takes a vote on each of those two items separately. But in the first point, the vote is for all members to go through the list and to call out either for the chairmanship of the E&P committee. Each member would call out either Councillor Judith Skinner or Councillor Anne Dorian. And once that vote is concluded and the conclusion is able to be shared with full council, the voting pattern, council then move and do the same exercise with the vice chairman of the planning committee, where each councillor would vote for either Councillor Alison Austin or Councillor Peter Watson. And then, having concluded that part of the business, I would then propose council consider the Black Sluice representations, and I'd be able to assist with how that might happen. So in terms of what I'm asking council to consider is there a proposer and a seconder to deal with the E&P chairmanship and the planning vice chairmanship in the way in which I have set out, in that there is a simple roll call for each member to determine whom they would wish to see in that position. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I through you, look for if there is a proposer and a seconder to that way of securing the outcome of those votes.
Thank you, Michelle. We have, I think, Councillor Ashton, and then we have Councillor Woodliffe. Councillor Ashton, Tom Ashton, would you like to come to the screen, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was simply going to say that I think what the monitoring officer has just described is an eminently sensible course of action that prevents us ending up in a situation where we are constantly moving amendments which effectively negate the proposal, so may indeed be out of order. I think it makes perfect sense as a way to move forward. I'm very happy to formally move that course of action and look for a seconder if that would be at all helpful, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Woodliffe. Councillor Woodliffe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to go along with that. I'll second that.
Thank you very much.
Reserve my right to speak later on when we talk about discuss the various candidates.
Thank you, Councillor Woodliffe. Okay, since it has been proposed and seconded, then does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Woodliffe.
Mr. Mayor, what are we going to speak on? Are we going to speak on the various candidates, or is the idea that we speak on the motion itself?
Well, as Michelle Sachs clarified, we're gonna vote. Otherwise, is Councillor Judith Skinner or Councillor Anne Dorian?
Right,
that will be straightforward. Would you like to put a word about some councillor then?
I'd like to propose Councillor Anne Dorian for chair of the E&P committee.
But we already have a proposal for what Michelle Sachs has suggested, and you second it yourself. So,
okay.
You second
Mr. Chairman, may I assist?
Yes.
Councillor Woodliffe, there's just been a proposer and a seconder in terms of voting in the way that I had suggested for ease, which is simply each councillor calls out the name of their preferred candidate for on this particular vote, the chairmanship of the E&P committee. If you are, I think what you're wishing to say is, I think you're wishing to endorse a councillor, a particular named candidate. In which case, if any member wished to say something about a particular candidate for that position of chairman of E&P, then I think that is what Councillor Woodliffe you are seeking to do. But you're not seeking to move a motion, because that's already been moved and seconded in terms of the way we will vote, or you will vote. This is now about if anyone has anything that they would wish to say about the respective candidates, if that assists, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Michelle. I mean, that's what I said, and the Councillor Woodliffe already seconded the proposal. So, yes, Councillor Woodliffe.
Does that give me the opportunity to speak now, Michelle?
If Mr. Mayor, if I can come in, If you speak now, then effectively you're speaking for your right to reserve your vote, because you reserve your speech till later. So if you
Right.
want to speak now, then you've used your reserve the right to speak later. But if you wish to see what anyone else says, if anyone else indeed will say anything, then you can wait. And if no one says anything, then you may do the time you've reserved to speak later.
I think I understand that, just.
Glad you do, Mr. Councillor Woodliff, because I certainly do not.
What you didn't understand, Councillor Rush?
Well, it seems to me that it seems to be a bit of a waste where we're going to vote for each candidate, and then at the end there's some kind of a summing up.
No.
No, there's no summing up. No.
The numerical victor is going to be the winner, isn't it? I think what I'm not putting words in Councillor Woodville's mouth, but I wanted to propose something on a specific candidate, and I want to do it now to try and convince people that my choice is the better choice. How can I do that once everyone has voted and made their choice?
If Mr. Mayor, if I can assist again.
Yes.
Councillor Rush, that is not what I've said. What I've said is if anyone wishes to speak about their preferred candidate, now is the time to do so. Councillor Woodliff asked if he could speak now. If he speaks now, then he doesn't keep his reserve the right to speak until the end of whoever may wish to endorse their own preferred candidate. At the end of everybody who may wish to speak about their preferred candidate, there will be a vote in the way that I have set out, in terms of each councillor will call out their preferred candidate. So there is no vote and then summing up. This is the opportunity for any member to speak now on their preferred candidate. And then after everybody has finished speaking, council will move to the vote as usual.
Thank you, Michelle. Is that clarifying for you the situation, Councillor Rush?
Not really, but I'm prepared to go along with it for the sake of peace and quiet. However, I would prefer to speak. If I'm going to speak, I'd prefer to speak now.
Okay, I will put you beforehand because you were speaking, because you didn't raise your hand, but you can speak, Councillor Rush, and then I will go to Councillor Goodale and Councillor Evans. Go ahead, Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In which case, I would like to propose that Councillor Dorian has the chair of this particular group. And let's examine the reasons why. I believe that Councillor Dorian has a far wider experience and knowledge of council law and the way councils work, as far as over the years she has been a councillor on and off now for quite a number of years. She also has been employed within the institution of welfare with children. She has extensive experience with teaching children. She's very well known in this town, and she also does a great job on her, probably an exemplary job on her ward. So the consequence of this is, I would like to sanction Councillor Dorian for the chair of this particular group, and I would look for a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Is there anybody who would like to second the proposition? Or we can.
No,
Michelle,
Mr.
yes.
Mayor, can I
Yes,
just
yes.
explain that there isn't proposals and seconders,
Yes.
because as I explained at the start, with only two candidates, as soon as the alternative candidate is proposed, that amendment creates a complete negation of the original motion. That is why I've set out and explained that the way in which council need to vote on this matter is simply at the end of everyone speaking on their preferred candidate. So rather than saying that you're seeking a proposer and a seconder, you are seeking just to effectively, just as Councillor Rush has done now, to set out his stall for his preferred candidate and then seek to persuade council to vote accordingly. Each member has the opportunity to do that. And at the end of everybody speaking, it is just a simple vote for, is it Councillor Skinner or Councillor Dorian? And I come back to the reason that we're not doing it on proposal and seconder is because there's only two candidates, and that will negate the original motion, and therefore it will be not a proper amendment.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, then we're going to go straight to the next councillors who are wishing to speak. Councillor Goodale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's obviously it is confusing, but I would have thought the proposer and seconder for the way the vote is going to be taken surely we need to have a vote on that first as the way forward before we do anything else. Maybe I've misunderstood, but my understanding is we have a proposer and a seconder to the way that the vote will be taken, as Michelle has outlined. And then after that, we would obviously, members would have the opportunity to actually speak up for which candidate they wished. Surely we need to take the vote first on the way we're going to run this. I'm sorry to confuse it anymore, but it is very confusing as to what we're actually doing here. And it seems to me we need to vote on the premise of this is the way we're going to do it, rather than people mixing one with the other. Because at the moment, we're taking all four together. And that seems rather strange. So I would assume, or maybe I'm wrong, but surely the thing we have to do first is establish the way that the vote is going to be taken in the first instance. And that is how Michelle outlined it and has been proposed and seconded. And surely we have to vote on that first.
Thank you, Councillor Goodale. I think I totally agree with you on that one. I think we should vote on that one first, and then we go to talk about other candidates. Is that correct, Michelle? Should we do that?
If that provides clarity for council, then yes.
Yes, I
I
think
come
so.
back to yeah. If that provides clarity for council and a way forward, then
yes. Janet, can we do a roll call, please, and a vote on? And can you repeat to the councillors what we are voting for, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Simply to, it's been proposed and seconded that we, after this vote, take a roll call as to which of the two nominees each councillor wants to be appointed chairman of E&P and then vice chairman of planning. I'll take them separately. So all those in favour of voting on these nominations in that manner, could you please indicate whether you're for, against or wish to abstain? Councillor Abbott?
For.
Councillor Ashton?
For.
Councillor Alison Austin?
For.
Councillor Richard Austin?
For.
Councillor Bedford?
For.
Councillor Bell?
For.
Councillor Cooper?
For.
Councillor Corner?
For.
Councillor, Mr. Mayor?
For.
Councillor Dorian?
For.
Councillor Evans?
For.
Councillor Goodale?
For.
Councillor Griggs?
For.
Councillor Hasty?
For.
Councillor Howard?
For.
Councillor Noble?
For.
Councillor Pickett? Councillor Rush?
For.
Councillor Judith Skinner?
For.
Councillor Paul Skinner?
For.
Councillor Spencer is absent. Councillor Stevens?
For.
Councillor Watson?
For.
Councillor Wellborn?
For.
Councillor Welton?
For.
Councillor Woodliff?
For.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
So thank you very much. Now I come back to who is wishing to speak. I will start with Councillor Evans. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say really that I think Councillor Judith Skinner has done an absolute excellent job as being chairwoman up to now. And Councillor Skinner reaches across all parties and encourages all to participate. I'm worried that an aggressive manner would be off-putting and not everybody would participate, and we wouldn't achieve the results that have currently been achieved with Councillor Skinner. So Councillor Skinner, I would like to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm hearing you, Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you very much.
Please, please.
Yeah, thank you. I wish to propose Councillor Anne Dorian for the position. I've got a great deal of respect for Councillor Judith Skinner, but the problem really is in the legal side of things. And if you look at the statutory guidance issued by the DGLLC, it says that Given their preeminent role on the scrutiny committee, it is strongly recommended that the chair not preside over the scrutiny of their relatives. Given their preeminent role on the scrutiny committee, it is strongly recommended that the chair of the scrutiny committee should not preside over scrutiny of the relatives. Now, this is statutory guidance that comes down from government, and we've approved this. We've passed this into our legislation, so it's our rules and regulations. So it's there, statutory guidance on overview and scrutiny committees signed off by, well, it was the Chancellor when he was in charge of this department, Rishi Sunak. And so it's a problem. It's a great problem for me, because I have a great deal of respect for Councillor Judith Skinner. I think she's an excellent chairman in every regard. But there's that legal situation, isn't there?
Thank you.
About the definition of a relative can be found on the Localism Act 2011, if anybody's any doubt. Just read the documentation. And that's our problem. It's not a personal one, as I say. Got a great deal of time for Judith Skinner. I think she's an outstanding chairman in every regard. I agree with Councillor Deborah Evans that she's a good choice. She's a good chairman. But we have a legal situation here. And as I say, Section 31, given their preeminent role on the scrutiny committee, is strongly recommended that the chair not preside over the scrutiny of their relatives. It's strongly recommended. It doesn't say you can't. It's not quite like that, but it's strongly recommended. So we have to be careful how we're viewed elsewhere. Are we following the guidance that comes down from government? Well, we're not here. And that's a problem. And that's why I've got to support Councillor Anne Dorian. I think she'll make an excellent chairman anyway. I think she's an outstanding councillor. But that's not the real issue. The real issue here is the guidance from government, the statutory guidance. So I'm going to leave at that point. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodliff. Thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh.
I would like to, well, really tell you about Judith Skinner, Councillor Skinner. I had the joy and privilege of being vice with her on the EMP committee, and she has proven nothing but completely for the EMP. She is unbiased in every single way, and she allows the committee to make the decisions, not the chairperson. So in my books, she should carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, Peter.
I have to echo the concerns of Councillor Stephen Woodliff here, because we really, as I say, should be sticking to what the legislation says. Yeah. At the same time, I will say I have the utmost respect for Councillor Judith Skinner. She is a good chair. I also have a lot of respect for Councillor Dorian, and that is who I will be putting my vote to. I think she will make an excellent chair as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Stevens, Yvonne Stevens, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Like Councillor Abbott, at one time I was deputy to Judith Skinner, and everything that Councillor Abbott has said, I totally echo. She's an excellent, excellent chair of scrutiny, and so unbiased. She is brilliant. And I'm going to take the word guidance. That is a guide, it's not an order. So one can take the guidance, but in the situation that one finds oneself, one makes one's own mind up. I shall make my mind up, and I shall vote for Judith Skinner because she's excellent. Nothing to say bad about Councillor Dorian, because I'm sure she's a very good councillor, but on this, I've seen Judith Skinner working, and she's got my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. We have Councillor Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would simply wish to speak very briefly in support of Councillor Skinner as Chairman of the Environment and Performance Committee. And I'd simply say it doesn't matter, and it should never matter who one's relatives happen to be in a council situation. We are a relatively small council, and in terms of both numbers and geographical area. And as previous speakers have rightly referred to, we should not confuse what is guidance and what is recommended in that guidance with what is legal. You know, we hear the word legal is bandied around this evening, and it's incorrect. We do have guidance. We have the same kind of guidance. Would suggest that members of the cabinet should not serve on any committees, including, for instance, planning. And if you have a council of 55 members, then it isn't difficult to fill these posts effectively from across the council. But when you have a council of 30 members, and 29 as we currently are, and you still have the same number of committee posts, the same number of committee chairs, the same number of cabinet roles to fill as in a council twice the size of this one, then there is room for discretion and good sense to come into the mix. And in my experience, I have only served intermittently as a member of the Environment and Performance Committee, but I have, in my time on that committee, only the highest praise for Councillor Skinner in her chairing of that committee, and I have seen the good work that has come from that committee. It is worth noting, of course, that Councillor Skinner has done this role since 2015. And I think the relative question that has been posed this evening has indeed been effectively unchanged since 2015. The only thing that has changed is the vice chairman of that committee, and I think it says something of the quality of a chairman when 3 out of the last 4 vice chairmen of that committee have found themselves on a fast track to cabinet. I think it showed good leadership. I think it showed good inspiration. And I think it showed a good understanding of what scrutiny is genuinely about. You know, good scrutiny is about improving decisions, enhancing decision making. It isn't about waterboarding the member of cabinet who's unfortunate enough to turn up on that particular occasion. And I have every confidence that the good nature of Councillor Skinner, her approach to the job is exactly what is needed in order to continue with good scrutiny, rather than the alternative course which I mentioned a few moments ago. So Councillor Skinner has my full support to carry on in this role, to carry on doing a good job. And that's the thing. It's about having good councillors and the right councillors in the right job. And I cannot think of any member of this council that would equal Councillor Skinner in this role and responsibility. And she has my full support this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. We have Councillor Goodale. Councillor Goodale.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I have to agree with a lot of members that Councillor Skinner has been a good chairman and has been as unbiased as can be, I guess. My main problem is the issue raised by Councillor Woodliff, or one of my problems. And I would like to have some legal thoughts on that from the monitoring officer. But on a personal note, I've never been of the opinion that members of the ruling group should chair scrutiny, because that to me actually means that the ruling group control the agenda of scrutiny. I fully respect Councillor Skinner as the chairman, and while I've been on this council, she has always been quite fair and unbiased with me, I have to say. But that being said, I don't actually agree with members of the ruling group being chairs of scrutiny. I hear what Councillor Ashton says in the limited numbers of the Conservative group, but that's not a problem with this council. I do believe that members of the ruling group shouldn't chair scrutiny. That's just my own view. It's my personal view, and I will vote on accordingly. But I would like to hear from the monitoring officer, Mr. Mayor, whether the guidance is just guidance, not to be observed if we don't want to, or whether there is some substance behind that guidance, shall we say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goodale. My plan is to finish and everybody should have their right to speak. Now we don't have any more speakers. Then I will go to Michelle Sachs to give us her clarification on this guidance. If you can come in, Michelle, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Paragraph 31 of the statutory guidance states, given their preeminent role on the scrutiny committee, it is strongly recommended that the chair not preside over scrutiny of relatives. If it was a blanket restriction that prevented a family member from presiding over scrutiny, the wording of the guidance would be shall not. But it is not, it is strongly recommended. And therefore it is not a veto on a family member being able to be a chairman of a committee upon which would scrutinise a family member. So that's the first thing, to make that clear. And secondly, statutory guidance is guidance, and we do, as your MO, I would say we follow that unless there is real cause not to. But therefore I come back to being very clear about the wording. It does not say shall not, it says strongly recommended. And I think just for context, Councillor Ashton made reference to the planning committee, and there is similar guidance from many years ago around membership of the planning committee. And again, as MO, that's something that I've had to consider in the past. And it's back to the size of the council in terms of if you're a smaller council, it is sometimes harder to fill those roles, which is why the guidance would say strongly recommend as opposed to shall not. Many thanks, Mr. Mayor. And if I can be of any further help, please don't hesitate to ask.
Of course. Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The guidance goes into 31 pages and we can pick lots of things out. And as the monitoring officer said, it's a guidance. But there's also paragraphs in there that say that the chair plays a leadership role on a scrutiny committee as they are largely responsible for establishing its profile, influence of ways of working. It also says that there's paragraphs in there that say that the chairman shouldn't be, that authorities should take into account and members should not take into account a member's perceived level of support for it or opposition to a particular political party. So that there's lots of guidance and we can pick this about, but as the monitoring officer said, it is guidance. Now, Councillor Skinner has been an outstanding chairman of this committee. I was her deputy for a year and a half, 2 years, and she welcomed me as an opposition member onto her committee, and she supported me when I first joined this council, and she did not take into account what political party I was in or what my feelings were, what my beliefs or what my opinions were. What she did was welcome me with open arms. She listened to my opinions. She listened to the members' opinions of the whole committee. She is not biased as the chairman of that committee. She is her own woman, and she should be judged as an individual, not on who she may or may not be linked to. Councillor Skinner is a very, very good chairman, a very fair chairman, unbiased, and in my opinion is the best person for the job, and that is why I will be supporting her. She is the best person to chair this committee going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. Well, there is no more hands, there is no more speakers. If there is none, Janet, we're going to go to the vote. And please, Janet, before we go to the vote, can you just make clear to the councillors how it's going to be done one more time so we don't have any confusion, please? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. There's two nominees for the position of Chairman of the Environment and Performance Committee. That's Councillor Anne Dorian and
Yes.
Councillor Judith Skinner. I'll ask each councillor present in alphabetical order if they could simply say the name of the councillor who they wish to appoint as chairman of that committee, whether it's Councillor Dorian or Councillor Skinner. Councillor Abbott, please.
Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Alison Austin.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Richard Austin.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Bedford.
Councillor Dorian.
Councillor Bell.
Councillor Dorian.
Councillor Cooper.
Councillor Dorian.
Councillor Corner.
Councillor Skinner.
Yourself, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Dorian, you are able to vote for yourself.
Yes, what? Councillor Dorian.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Goodale.
Councillor Dorian.
Councillor Griggs.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Hasty.
Councillor Dorian.
Thank you. Councillor Howard.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Noble.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Pickett.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Rush.
Councillor Dorian.
Councillor Judith Skinner.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Paul Skinner.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Dorian.
Councillor Wellborn.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Welton.
Councillor Skinner.
Councillor Woodliff.
Councillor Dorian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is a clear majority, but I'll add up the votes to give you the exact number.
It's 15-9.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 15-9 in favour of Councillor Judith Skinner, who's therefore appointed as chairman of the Environment and Performance Committee.
Thank you very much.
Can I just advise you, Mr. Mayor, that Councillor Trafford lost connection earlier in the meeting, and I believe she is now back with us, and that's why she hasn't taken part in those votes. No, I think she's lost connection again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll now take the vote. There are two for the vice chairmanship of the Planning Committee. There are two nominations for Councillor Alison Austin and for Councillor Peter Watson. Again, I'll go through members if you could indicate which councillor you wish to vote for. Councillor Abbott.
Sorry, Jeanette, before I interject there,
Yes, sorry, yes.
Mr. Mayor, do you just want to clarify with members, because I think the first part of that debate was very much about the chairmanship of EMP, and it may be that some members wish to comment on the vice chairmanship of the Planning Committee.
Yes.
Apologies for interjecting. Thank you.
No, that's fine. I was going to come back. I was going to remind Janet about that, because we had the right to speak about the other two candidates. We should do the same with the planning as well. So if anybody is wishing to speak about their candidate of as a deputy chairmans, vice chairmans for the planning, and we have Councillor Alison Austin and Councillor Peter Watson. Anybody wishing to speak? Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course I can hear you, Councillor Rush.
Thank you very much. When you say, of course I can hear you, I don't know that, of course you can't. So it's quite difficult, really. So, Mr. Mayor, I apologize for that. What I want to say is we have here a situation where we have the past and the future. And I believe that planning is part of this administration's future, our town's future. and the people that live in this town's future. I believe that I will be promoting Councillor Watson simply because he is the future. He brings to the table something that no one else can, in that he has not been a resident of this town for a very, very, very long time. So he's not at all stuck in a time warp of the way the town used to be. I believe that Councillor Watson has an eye on the future. I believe that if we are going to try and promote ourselves as being a forward-looking and effective borough, and the lots of challenges that there are to be had in this borough, I think that Councillor Watson is the best man to do that, simply and purely because he holds the key to his area, which is a very rural area, yet he has a great list of customers, for want of a better word, where his hand is on the tiller of where this town is going. I do not believe that, and I regret to say that Councillor Alison Austin has been a member of this council for a very long time, and she has great respect in some quarters. But we have to look about Boston being a better place for the future of our children, for the future of our schools, for the future of everyone that talks about making Boston a better place. I will be voting for Councillor Watson. I think that everyone should put aside their political flags, and I think they should take this vote on the basis of what they think is best for the future of Boston. That is our duty, and I believe I will be doing my duty by supporting Councillor Watson. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Thank you. We have Councillor Woodliff.
All right. Just a minute.
Take your time, Councillor Woodliff.
Can you hear? Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Of course I can hear you, but I cannot see you.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
No worries. I'm very patient.
Right, well, I'd like to come in and say, well, actually, we know that Councillor Austin is hugely experienced in planning. Probably there's nobody on the council that's got as much experience with planning as Councillor Austin has. But I am aware of the fact that we need to give other people the opportunity to serve on committees. And what concerns me is that young people come onto the council and they have nothing to do, no learning to do. So I think it's very important that we give people who perhaps aren't so used to, haven't so much experience, to gain experience. People can't gain experience if they don't do things. So I think we need to give Councillor Watson a chance to make a contribution to the council and to learn a little more about how the council operates. I don't think we can fault Councillor Austin for her commitment to planning. I think she's been outstanding for many years. She knows more about planning than I will ever know. But we have to give the young people a chance. Well, I hope Councillor Austin won't mind me calling him a young person, but you have to give people who haven't served on committees an opportunity. And if we always restrict the positions for vice chairmanships to the most experienced people, then we're not going to give those who have no experience the chance to learn the job. So I think we do need to consider that. And I think Councillor Watson has experience of other things. He needs to learn how to operate. And the best way to do that is to be the vice chairman. That's where you learn the role of how to be a chairman itself. So I would say that I will support Councillor Watson, because I think we need to give younger people, sorry, Councillor Watson, you're probably younger than me. You must be younger than me. Everybody's younger than me, surely, apart from one or two others. We must give other people the opportunity to learn the roles. And part of that, I say, is being a vice chairman. So I'll support Councillor Watson in this particular case. But that's not to say that I haven't got great respect for Councillor Austin. As I say, she is an outstanding expert on planning. No one probably knows more about planning than Councillor Austin. Anyway, I've said my piece now, and I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Thank you. Councillor Paul Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to pick up on some of the things that Councillor Woodliff has said. Alison Austin has a great deal of experience, both at county and at Boston on planning matters. That's really good. She also has a great deal of experience regarding council development. And I will be backing Alison Austin for this, but obviously I'm very, very keen to see councils develop, and they have the opportunity within their party. You know, the people who are on the party, their bit, their seat will let them have the opportunity to come and sit on planning, because I think that's how things ought to work. We ought to encourage people to take part and give them the training. So I'll be supporting Alison Austin. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Skinner. Councillor Tom Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We've heard quite a lot in a few short moments of youth versus experience and all the rest of it. It's very interesting to hear from Councillor Rush. Obviously, they're reflecting on the time back in 2007 when both himself and Councillor Austin were both the future. I'm pleased to say that in my estimations, Councillor Austin remains the future, whereas perhaps Councillor Rush may indeed have been the future one. But I think it's right to have a balance of age and experience and understanding. Planning is a very serious business. I can't think, having the honour of being the chairman of that
Councillor Ashton,
I can't.
Just 1 second. Councillor Rush, I can hear you talking behind. I will give you the right to talk. Just give me a second. Can you finish, Councillor Tom? Councillor Ashton, sorry, can you finish?
Thank you. I hope Councillor Rush takes my jest in the good spirit with which it's intended.
That was not a jest.
My substantive point is that as chairman and having the honour of being chairman of the planning committee, I cannot think of anyone I would rather at this time have as vice chairman on that committee, given the role that Councillor Austin has had in the past in developing the South East Links Local Plan, which is the guiding document along with the National Planning Policy Framework of much of the business of the Planning Committee. And it's not a matter of political flags. It's not a matter of training people. I have every confidence that Councillor Watson's development as a member of the Planning Committee, I will do everything I can as chairman of that committee to encourage that, and I can highly recommend, once we are the other side of this lockdown, I can highly recommend the local government associations planning courses. They do excellent events where you get to meet with councillors from other authorities the length and breadth of the country and understand how they do planning and how we do planning and what works for them and what works for us. And having had experiences those previously, I'm pleased to say that we do it very well. But there are means of bringing people on, there are means of developing the councils that we have. And I mean, I say to Councillor Watson, there are a lot more opportunities outside of the Bostonian Independent Group or Independent Group 2 or whatever it's calling itself this week than there are inside of it. But at the same time, I salute the experience of Councillor Austin. She has had 13 years of consistent service to this council. All of it constructive, all of it positive. And she has my wholehearted endorsement, without fear or favour, as vice chairman on the planning committee. And I hope that members tonight will give their support to Councillor Austin, so that I might look forward to working with her for the duration of this of this coming municipal year and hopefully into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Dorian, if you just allow me, I just want to hear the comment from Councillor Rush. Councillor Rush, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I take exception to what the last speaker has just intimated. And I will be making an official complaint, and I want everyone to hear this. I want to make an official complaint at the lack of respect that he is shown to an elected member in a discussion discussion and a debate about the future of this council. I rest my case, and I will be, and Councillor Ashton will be hearing from me. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, Councillor Rush. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. Councillor Dorian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's such a shame that a disparaging comment had to be made about a councillor who's not even up for election for anything. I think that's disgraceful and looks like the nasty party are back. I suspect that Councillor Bedford must be feeling a bit of deja vu this evening, thinking back to when he did a confidence and supply arrangement in order to get his votes over the line. It was a necessary thing he had to do then and give away certain chairmanships. It's all happened again. The definition of madness is to keep doing the same thing day in, day out and expect a different outcome. I don't expect a different outcome. I know exactly what's happened. It's very sad. It's really very sad. But I predict that this vote will be identical to the last vote. And Mr. Chairman, I've got to go after this vote. I must give my apologies now, and I won't interrupt the meeting when I need to leave. Thank you.
It's accepted. Thank you, Councillor Dorian. No problem. Thank you. If there are, Councillor Tom Ashton, you want to come back? Because I can see your hand.
I'm going to do a point of personal explanation, but I see that Councillor Wellborn had her hand up on the screen. I think
I cannot see it on the screen. I didn't see the hand of Councillor Wellborn, to be honest with you, because once
she's putting her, I think it's the clap hand, but I think she's indicating to speak, and I give way to her.
Okay, we go back to that. Yes, Councillor Wellborn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ashton, for that, for acknowledging. I was trying to wave, and my thing doesn't always work for some reason.
You have the raised hand, but anyway, we go to that later. You can speak. Sorry.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Apologies.
I would like to fully endorse Councillor Alison Austin for the position as Vice Chair on planning. She has been on the council a great deal of years, I admit, but as my mentor in her group, she has been exemplary. And on planning, I know she is so forward thinking that she leaves some of us younger councillors standing. She is an excellent chair at anything she does, and an excellent vice chair at anything she does. And I do think that, you know, obviously, yes, younger people need a chance, and I'm one of them at the moment, I agree. But we all have to come up slowly sometimes, some of us not always quite so slowly. But I'm sure we'll all get there. We have still got a couple of years to go before we have to reapply or stand again. And I'm sure Councillor Watson will get his chance to either chair or vice chair a committee, which he will be extremely good at and extremely suited to. But at this moment in time, I fully endorse Councillor Alison Austin. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wellborn, and my apologies for not seeing your hand. Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that this for me is quite important, and I think my responsibility as portfolio holder for economic development and knowing the kind of major things that are coming to the town over the next in the near future. And I want to put on record that I think Councillor Watson is an absolutely sound councillor, and I think I've listened to a few planning meetings, and yes, you know, as people have said, he is a very, very competent planning member, and for that, you know, in the short time that he's been a councillor, is a credit to himself. However, having known Councillor Austin for much longer, and I know the involvement that she has had in the local plan and the depth and history of knowledge that she has, I just think that on this occasion, I think she would be a better deputy chair for the major things that are coming. But I want Councillor Watson not to take this as a negative, but take it as a positive, that I am sure your time will come, Councillor Watson, because I think that you are a rising star within your group, and I think that things in front of you will pan out. I just think that on the balance that I have personally, I'd have to support Councillor Austin just for the points that I've made earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. Councillor Ashton, yes, briefly.
Just very briefly on a point of personal explanation, Mr. Mayor, to say that I'm very sorry that Councillor Rush is offended by my jest, which is meant with the very best of nature. I never mean these things with any nastiness or particular seriousness. We're all well versed in this sport, although I think the reaction of both Councillor Rush and Councillor Dorian would suggest that Boston's original nasty party really doesn't like it when it comes back at them, and I don't even mean it nastily.
You're doing it again. Just
Thank you, Councillor Ashton.
Stop it.
Can we grow up a little bit and let's carry on what we have to do?
Mr. Mayor, that is completely out of order.
Thank you,
Completely out of
Councillor Rush.
order.
Councillor Rush, thank you. We're going to stop this and there is no more speakers. So let's carry on our items and let's carry on our work and what we have to do on behalf of the Boston residents and our communities. Now, if there is no more speakers, Janet, I will ask you to go for a vote, please. And let's carry that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, if each councillor could indicate whether they wish to vote for Councillor Austin or Councillor Watson. Councillor Abbott.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Ashton.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Alison Austin.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Richard Austin.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Bedford.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Bell.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Cooper.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Corner.
Councillor Austin.
Yourself, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Dorian.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Goodale.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Griggs.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Hasty.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Howard.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Noble.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Pickett.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Rush.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Judith Skinner.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Paul Skinner.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Trafford.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Councillor Wellborn.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Welton.
Councillor Alison Austin.
And Councillor Woodliff.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's carried in favour of Councillor Alison Austin. So she's been appointed as Vice Chairman of the Planning Committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Janet. Thank you. I do believe Councillor Dorian will be leaving us now, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Councillor Dorian?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish you well. Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much and have a good evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may now, we must move to the third part of that report, which is to have Black Sluice Internal Drainage Board members approved by Council as an external body. And I think on this matter, it's a matter for Council to propose and second a combination of those,
Seven
those
members,
representatives. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have Councillor Ashton raising his hand. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would simply like to move that Councillors Ashton, Richard Austin, Peter Bedford, Michael Cooper, Frank Pickett, Paul Skinner and County Councillor Mike Brooks as a lay member be elected to serve on the Black Sluice Drainage Board en bloc for the remainder of this municipal year. Thank you very much.
That's seven. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Evans?
Yes, I would like to second that as well, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Do we have any speakers? Anybody wishing to speak before we go to the vote, please?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to speak, please.
Yes, Councillor Rush.
Councillors, I would just like to say that you are almost guilty of having a cartel of people in this for this particular position. And I noticed that Councillor Ashton has been very quick to put the names down, but he will notice that my name, and I think that I'm not sure that Councillor Watson is on there as well. So I think that they should go to the vote. I think they should be prepared to vote for or against every single member on that committee. There is no doubt in my mind that the people of this town deserve the people of this town, ladies and gentlemen, deserve some representation on the Black Sluice. From the names that I can see here, there does not appear to be anyone other than myself who is a town member. And I believe that that is an essential token for this town to feel included in the Black Sluice Drainage Service that they all participate in. It is not just a farmers club. It is not just an agricultural club. It's not even a town club. This is a club for the whole community. And I propose that I will be putting myself forward as a candidate for this position to stay on this, to be voted onto this committee. And I would look for a seconder, Mr. Mayor.
So what I will advise you, can you come with, because it will be an amendment, can you come with 7 members? And then we need, you propose it, 7 members, and then you will have a seconder. And then we will vote on your proposition if it goes. If it doesn't go, then we go back to Councillor Ashton's proposition.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
may I seek to assist again? There was almost two parts that Councillor Rush may have been looking at. The first part of his suggestion was that each member voted for 7 people in the way the voting would take place. So similarly to how we've just done the vote before in 2, I think Councillor Rush may have been suggesting that, but then that led rise to that gave rise to an amendment proposing himself. Again, just as you said, he would need to list the 7 because actually the proposal of Councillor Rush to that is not taking anyone away from that number. And of course, there is only a maximum of 7. So does that help Councillor Rush in phrasing what he's proposing to council?
Councillor Rush?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am all ears here. And it seems to me that all I want to do is to indicate to the people of Boston that, in fact, I do not have support, but I do recognise the fact that Boston Town itself has no representation whatsoever on the Black Sluice Drainage Board. So I will now withdraw for the sake of peace and tranquility, if you like. But I want the people of this town to know that this was, in my terms, a manoeuvre created somewhere else. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Your point is taken. Thank you. Now we're going to go to Councillor Austin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm concerned that this is not like a committee made up solely of these members. There are a number of other board members who are not part of Boston Borough Council. They are representative of elsewhere within the catchment area of the Black Sluice. And I think before anyone puts themselves forward for nomination to this board, they really need to get themselves very, very familiar with what our internal drainage boards are all about. They are incredibly important. It is not just the town of Boston we are talking about. It is right through to sections of South Kesteven, I don't think it goes in South Kesteven, possibly North Kesteven, and but so much of it, in fact, is working towards the drainage of the the catchment area for the Black Sluice is just it is vast, and it is, I think, so necessary that anyone who does put themselves forward for this, first of all, actually takes the time to learn about what will be involved. It is not just like a small Boston committee or a small Boston organization. This is a very, very important part of the drainage of the south of Lincolnshire. Everything, in fact, as far as we're concerned, on the southwest side of the river itself. And it is the need to protect our livelihoods, which is, of course, a large amount of that livelihood, in fact, is agriculture. So they have a very, very big responsibility. And I would implore that anyone who is interested, first of all, does some serious research to find out what it's all about. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. And thank you for the clarification. Very interesting. Thank you. I have Councillor Goodale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question basically what Councillor Ashton has proposed is the committee being reappointed, or the members being reappointed. Can I ask through you, Mr. Mayor, although I appreciate the Drainage Board, the great work the Drainage Board is doing keeping our feet dry, and I do have some sympathy with Councillor Rush as that they do, there are no members from the town actually on it, but can I ask through you about the attendance of members, because it is a very important committee, as has been said, very important. The Drainage Boards are very important to us, but also is if we appoint members that they should attend. And I just wonder what the attendance of members is. You know, have they all attended? I appreciate with the present restrictions of COVID, then that attendance at meetings will be less. But can I ask of the meetings that were able to be attended, if all members that has been put forward have attended, and if they haven't attended, if that makes sense. Thank you,
Yes, yes, I hear what you say and I understand what you say, Councillor Goodale. Yes, but I don't think so. Anybody will probably present us now with the attendance sheet here to tell us who is attending. Probably it will be emailed to us. And correct me if I'm wrong, Janet or Michelle, if you can help on this issue. I think we have to look at it. Or probably it should be sent to all councillors to see the attendance rate of the councillors. Yes, Michelle, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, we don't have that information readily to hand this evening.
So
we would need to
would it be possible to be emailed to all councillors and to see?
Yes, we will seek to find that information and share,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
that will be appreciated. Thank you. Is that a helping, Councillor Goodale?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that it does help, but it also leaves me with the problem of supporting Councillor Ashton's proposal, because I don't know if I'm supporting members that haven't attended, which to me would be a travesty if that's the case. But I will vote against his proposal, but on those grounds, really, that I have no real knowledge of whether members have attended or not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goodale. Councillor Hastie, I seen your hand, and Councillor Rush, I will come back to you later because I can see the Chief Executive, the Joint Chief Executive, Rob Barlow, would like to come in. Can we have the Joint Chief Executive, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be very brief, I am conscious that the meeting's almost 2 hours now, and you do have the 3-hour guillotine. There are three very important items on the agenda this evening, and we've only gone through really minutes, members' questions, and appointment to these committees. So just a reflection on the time for everybody, please.
Yes, I'm aware of that, Rob. So we have to keep. Yes, Councillor Hastie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this very quick. Can I make an amendment to the list, please? Can I have Councillor Bedford, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Pickett, Councillor Rush, Councillor Paul Skinner, Councillor Watson, please?
So that's 6. You need one more.
Oh, and Mr. M. Brooks, the lay member.
Okay. So do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Rush, are you going to second that?
I will second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So since we have another amendment, I think the regulations says that we have to go through the amendment to vote on the amendment before we vote on the original one. If
Yes,
nobody,
Mr. Mayor, that's
Yes.
correct. You have the substantive motion which was moved by
Yes.
Councillor Ashton, and now you have an amendment. So,
So-
therefore, the debate and vote is on the amendment.
Yes. So there is no more speakers. I will go to Janet, and then you repeat what Councillor Hasty has stated just now, his amendment, and then we go to the vote straight away. Thank you. Yes, Janet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the amendment is that the following members be appointed to the Black Sluice Internal Drainage Board, and that would be Councillor Bedford, Cooper, Pickett, Rush, Paul Skinner, Watson, along with the lay member, Mr. Brooks.
Okay.
So I'll take the vote on that amendment.
Yes.
If members could indicate whether they are for, against, or wish to abstain. Councillor Abbott,
Against.
Councillor Ashton,
Again,
Councillor Alison Austin,
Against.
Councillor Richard Austin,
Against.
Councillor Bedford,
If I may, I would abstain on this. I think this is a very, very difficult situation for the people that are already on there.
thank you. Councillor Bell,
Yeah, I think I'm going to have abstain as well, because as my colleague Paul Goodale required the attendance figures, and I would have liked them as well. So yeah, I'm going to have to abstain.
thank you. Councillor Cooper,
Against.
Councillor Corner,
Against.
yourself, Mr. Mayor.
Against.
Councillor Dorian has left. Councillor Evans,
Against.
Councillor Goodale,
Abstain for the reasons I gave earlier.
Councillor Griggs,
Against.
Councillor Hasty,
For.
Councillor Howard,
Against.
Councillor Noble,
Against.
Councillor Pickett,
Against.
Councillor Rush,
For.
Councillor Judith Skinner,
Against.
Councillor Paul Skinner,
Against.
Councillor Stevens,
Against.
Councillor Trafford,
Councillor Trafford has lost connection again, Mrs. Collier.
thank you, thank you. Councillor Watson,
For.
Councillor Wellborn,
Against.
Councillor Welton,
Against.
and Councillor Woodliff.
Abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That amendment has clearly fallen.
So we're gonna go back now to the first proposition, which was proposed by Councillor Tom Ashton and seconded by Councillor Woodley. So we go to the vote on that one, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is, as somebody stated, reappointing the previous appointees. Councillor Abbott,
For.
Councillor Ashton,
for,
Councillor Alison Austin,
For.
Councillor Richard Austin,
For.
Councillor Bedford.
Abstain for the same reasons.
Thank you. Councillor Bell,
Abstain.
Councillor Cooper,
For.
Councillor Corner,
For.
Councillor, yourself, Mr. Mayor.
For.
Councillor Evans,
For.
Councillor Goodale,
Against.
Councillor Griggs,
For.
Councillor Hasty,
Against.
Councillor Howard,
For.
Councillor Noble,
For.
Councillor Pickett,
For.
Councillor Rush, Councillor Rush,
Councillor Rush,
Against.
Councillor Judith Skinner, Councillor Paul Skinner,
For.
Councillor Stevens,
For.
Councillor Watson,
Against.
Councillor Wellborn,
For.
Councillor Welton,
For.
Councillor Woodliff.
Abstain.
That's clearly carried, Mr. Mayor.
thank you very much now. Okay, thank you very much, Janet. We now move to the Licensing Act 2003, draft statement of licensing policy, which is I will invite Councillor Frank Pickett to introduce.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor, but Councillor Peter Bedford is indicating.
Oh, sorry, because I was reading. Yes, Councillor Peter Bedford.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a long-standing member on the Black Sluice and part of the executive, what I will bring up at the next executive meeting, because they have works committees there, and to get Councillor Rush and Councillor Watson, if they are happy to do so, I will ask if we can get them put on to works committees, and that way round they will start to learn the area and exactly what the board entails. If they're happy enough to do that, then at the next executive meeting, I will ask the Black Sluice exec if they'd be happy enough to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedford. That's very nice of you, very kind of you. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Rush.
I would like to thank Councillor Bedford for that proposal. However, I believe there's a case of discrimination here, and I would prefer not to take part in that motion that Councillor Bedford has kindly put forward. If we are either members of that board or we are not. If this council does not want us,
Councillor Rush, you are muted.
Mr. Mayor, I do apologise.
That's fine.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm afraid I will be taking an action of discrimination here, because at every point in this conversation we have been sabotaged. I thank Councillor Bedford for his offer, but I will kindly renege on it simply because I need to take separate action. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Okay, now we can carry on. We now move to the Licensing Act 2003, a draft statement of licensing policy, which is I will invite Councillor Frank Pickett to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pickett.
The Licensing Act 2003, this is a review of the statement of the licensing policy. Excuse me. Can you lose my voice? This report is to advise councillors of the requirement to adopt and publish a statement setting out the council's policy for its functions under the Licensing Act 2003. With respect to the sale of alcohol and provisions of regulated entertainment and light refreshments, the Act requires the licensing authority consults on, adopts and publishes its statement in principles every 5 years. The policy was previously revised and adopted in 2015. A consultation in accordance with the requirements of the Licensing Act 2003 was undertaken between 12th of August and 16th of October 2020. Statutory consultees, along with persons who represent licensees, businesses and residents, were consulted on the proposed provisions. Following the consultation of the final statement of licensing policy was considered by the licensing committee on the 10th of November 2020, and for the committee to recommend the statement be presented to the council for adoption. Following adoption of the licence of the statement, it will be published in accordance with the requirements of the Licensing Act. I therefore move that the policy be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pickett. Do you have a seconder? I can see the hand of Councillor Evans.
Yes, I'd be very happy to second that and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. We have Councillor Jonathan Noble. Anybody wishing to speak? Yeah, please, Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We know that a lot of Boston residents are particularly exercised or concerned about the number of licensed premises there are in the borough, and they're probably not familiar with the statement of licensing policy. One thing it states quite clearly there is this policy must not undermine the right of any person to apply under the terms of the Licensing Act 2003 for a variety of permissions and to have any such application considered on its individual merits. So the key point here is that the Licensing Act 2003 is a permissive act, and it's really the primary responsibility of the licensing committee to uphold the licensing objectives. And for the benefit of those people who don't know them who are listening, they are the prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance, public safety, and the protection of children from harm. So evidence is needed that a licensed premises is contravening or undermining the four licensing objectives before the council can take action to suspend or remove a license. So I think that needs to be made very clear to members of the public who perhaps are not quite sure of what the legal position is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Is anybody else wishing to speak? If there are no more speakers, then we're going to go to the vote, Janet, I think. You wish to speak, Evans? Would you like to come last because there's nobody wishing to speak? Councillor Evans?
My hand isn't up on, I haven't put my hand up.
Because there is no more speakers and you say you wish to speak last.
No, I just wanted to support and also what Councillor Noble has said. It's a very good point that he's made. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no more speakers, and I will ask Councillor Pickett to sum up, please.
I've no more to add to that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thank
So
you,
now
Mr. Mayor.
we can go to the vote, Janet. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. It's been proposed and seconded that the policy be adopted. All those in favour, could you indicate whether you're for, against, or wish to abstain? Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Ashton.
For.
Councillor Alison Austin.
For.
Councillor Richard Austin.
For.
Councillor Bedford.
For.
Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Corner.
For.
Yourself, Mr. Mayor.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Goodale.
For.
Councillor Griggs.
For.
Councillor Hasty.
For.
Councillor Howard.
For.
Councillor Noble.
For.
Councillor Pickett.
For.
Councillor Rush. Councillor Rush.
I can't see his name. I cannot see his name on the table and participants. Hopefully he didn't leave, which is, I presume, probably. I think he has left.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. Councillor Judith Skinner.
For.
Councillor Paul Skinner.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Wellborn.
For.
Councillor Welton.
For.
Councillor Woodliff.
For.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Council Tax Support Scheme 2021-2022, which I will ask Councillor Noble to introduce. Councillor Noble, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I remind members that the full council is to review the scheme to date, review the proposed options and approve the scheme for 2021 to 22. Now, I'm just going to briefly outline the history of the scheme, give some relevant figures and then outline the three options available. The Council Tax Support Scheme was introduced in April 2013 following the abolition of council tax benefit, and the present scheme is very similar to that which was originally brought in. The scheme is intended to protect pensioners, war pensioners, and persons of working age on low incomes. It's a means-tested scheme which allows a maximum entitlement of 75% for working age applicants. The caseload at the end of July was 4,634, comprising 2,379 working age applicants and 2,255 pension age applicants. When the 2018-19 Council Tax Support Scheme was approved, it was proposed that a fundamental review of the scheme would not be undertaken for at least 2 years due to delays in the rollout process for Universal Credit. The Universal Credit full service was rolled out in the Boston area in September 2018, but only for new claims. It's anticipated that the movement of all existing claims to Universal Credit will not be completed until 2023. Since the introduction of Universal Credit, those persons who receive it in addition to their wages and who are claiming council tax support can have their claims reassessed up to 12 times a year. So Universal Credit is assessed over a period of a month. The earnings of an applicant are assessed during that period. If they increase or decrease, the assessment for Universal Credit will change, thus creating a reassessment for council tax support. If there is a change to their assessment, it will alter their council tax instalments. This may mean that some applicants may go up to 12 months without receiving a council tax reminder. Current records show that there are approximately 900 cases where Universal Credit is in payment to successful applicants with earnings and a claim for CTS. On average, there are between 100 and 200 claims for council tax support each month. There are between 1,600 and 1,700 Universal Credit changes per month, but in September there were actually 1,900. Now we have three options available. One is to continue with the current scheme and uprating in line with Department of Work and Pensions uprating for working age Social Security benefits and non-dependent deductions. The second option, uprate in line with DWP and look only at assessing every 3 months those working age applicants who are receiving Universal Credit and are working. Under this option, if an applicant has a significant change in their income within the 3-month period, their case should be reassessed. This will allow the applicant more consistency with their entitlement and their monthly council tax charge. This option will also allow some administrative savings in terms of assessment and costs. And the third option is to make no changes to the current scheme and do not uprate in line with DWP upratings. Now, just to refer again to option 2, persons, claimants or applicants who find themselves in straitened financial circumstances will be able to order their personal finances more easily in the knowledge that their case will be reviewed only every 3 months rather than potentially every month. And so I move that option 2, as set out in the report, be adopted. A continuation of the current council tax support scheme, uprating in line with the Department of Work and Pensions upratings for working age Social Security benefits and non-dependent deductions, but assess working age applicants who are working and receipt of Universal Credit every 3 months. And I look for a seconder. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
I have a hand, which is Councillor Tracy Abbott, and I have Councillor Judith Wellborn. So, Councillor Judith Wellborn, would you like to second that?
I would like to second it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No worries. I do apologize, Councillor Tracy Abbott. Okay, does anybody wish to speak on this item? Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be quite brief. I have a long history of working with some of the most vulnerable people in our society, and I've worked in many local authorities over the last 20, 30 years. And what I can say is that not every local authority is equal. We would all like to do more for the most vulnerable people of our time, but unfortunately, we can only do so much. But what I do see with the paper in front of us is that Boston Borough Council does a lot more than a lot of councils I've worked with in the past. So I will be very happy tonight to support this scheme where we are giving the best protection that we possibly can to some of the most vulnerable people in our borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. I can't see anybody raising their hands to speak. If there is none, I will go to Councillor Noble to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe in maximum engagement with the opposition members. I know that perhaps hasn't happened all the time in the past, but from previous discussions on this matter, it would appear that option 2 is well supported by members. And if I may remind you that on Thursday, the 15th of October, the members of the Corporate and Community Committee voted unanimously to approve option 2. So it would seem from that and from interaction with other members that option 2 is well supported. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Janet, should we go now, please, to the vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, if members could indicate whether they are for, against, or wish to abstain on the adoption of option 2. Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Ashton.
For.
Councillor Alison Austin.
For.
Councillor Richard Austin.
For.
Councillor Bedford.
For.
Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Corner.
For.
Yourself, Mr. Mayor.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Goodale.
For.
Councillor Griggs.
For.
Councillor Hasty.
For.
Councillor Howard.
For.
Councillor Noble.
For.
Councillor Pickett. Councillor Judith Skinner.
For.
Councillor Paul Skinner.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Wellborn.
For.
Councillor Welton.
For.
Councillor Woodliff.
For.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you. Now we're going to move to the next item on the agenda is the corporate strategy, priorities 2020-2024. And I call upon Councillor Walton to introduce the report. Councillor Walton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members. Agenda item 4 is our new strategy for the next 4 years. This strategy has been through various processes already. We've had full member briefing, it's been to scrutiny, it's been to cabinet, it's been to council once, recommended for public consultation. It now comes back before us. There are many parts of this strategy that have been amended since it first started. And that is because all of the work of all the members present and some that are not present that are fed into the process. Members of the public have also fed into the process, as have our key partners, and many of the wonderful suggestions have been added to the corporate strategy. So when setting out to start this strategy, the one thing that was very evident is that the one thing that we are here for is people. We are here for the people of this borough, and that's priority number one. Now, we went through all the various parts of that, what people need for work, for housing, for transport, everything that could possibly be thought of. And we've put together what we think is a very good corporate policy, a corporate strategy that takes this borough forward, but also remembering that at the heart of this borough is its people. So I'm not going to go on much longer. In fact, I'm going to stop it there. I'm sure other members would like to make comment. We've been through this. over and over again. We've amended it, we've changed it, and we've turned it into what I believe is an absolutely fantastic document. And therefore, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendations set out in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. I did see the hand of Councillor Paul Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy to second this.
All right.
But I'm reserved my right to speak. It's really a welcome document. It fills a gap that we've had a long time, and it was mentioned by the LGA, the fact that we hadn't got a strategic document in place. It is really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Skinner. Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Noble. Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Yes.
I note priority 2, future prosperity, regeneration and growth. Now, Councillor Walton just alluded to the point that members of the public have fed into this process. And for me, that was perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of the whole procedure. Looking at the survey results, it was very instructive what were the priorities according to members of the public. And they seem to be town centre regeneration, investments, economic growth, supporting local businesses, traffic management, cleaner streets, encouraging tourism and a revitalisation of the marketplace. So I think most of us can agree that that is an absolutely key priority for this town. We need to attract inward investment. We need to create more jobs because more jobs will bring prosperity. And if we can improve the road traffic network, that's going to be instrumental in helping to achieve that. So I hope that other members will support the document. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Thank you. Councillor Alison Austin.
Just so you can see, I am still here.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Pleasure.
I'm pleased to see that during the course of this document's preparation, it has improved considerably. I know I personally made a lot of comments, which I was quite embarrassed to read, but they've all been taken on board. And also, though, I'm very interested to see how, as things are coming on board, I think one of the things mentioned was broadband and connectivity. These things have been woven in to the strategy. I think, as regards the comments, I'm afraid the comments fall into two categories. Those people who are enlightened and are prepared to think outside the box, then there are some really good comments. But it's disappointing when some residents, and I fear it is residents, can't get can't get beyond some of the niggles, but they are things that I would like to think any council is continually working for. It goes without saying that trying to reduce fly tipping or keeping streets clean, that is part surely of any district council's wishes. But a corporate strategy is more than that, isn't it? It's about what we are aspiring to. And all right, we may not manage to achieve all these the lifetime of this council. And I say we, because I'm never going to be in administration. That's not my sort of role in life. But it's if you don't aspire to things, you don't ever achieve anything good, do you? You always aim high. That's what life's all about. I mean, I've been a teacher, and you want to get the best out of your students. So this is exactly the same. We want to be getting the best that we can, which is, I think, really what this document is aspiring towards. And we know, surely, as a district council, as a borough council, that I use the word district because some people don't seem to necessarily understand that as a borough, we are the equivalent of the districts within Lincolnshire and also, of course, the city of Lincoln. And not everything is within our gift. There's so much lack of understanding that it is not within our gift to do that or that or that. Some are major national infrastructure schemes, but we can lobby for them. We can work with partners. And that is what this is all about. A council and partnership, those are the key words, aren't they? And so I'm very happy to be supporting this document now in this form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alison Austin. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Having had the experience of glancing at similar documents from various councils around the country, I have to say that we have a fantastic balance here between a document which is aspirational on the one hand, but understandable and readable and digestible on the other, that sets out a route map of where we want to go without without running to an Encyclopedia Britannica as to how we might get there, because there is always the danger. I know some councils around the country have fallen very firmly into this trap of producing a document that runs to about 400 pages plus appendices, which look very pretty, sits in their foyer and will never ever be read by anyone. I'm pleased to say that that our version is demonstrably attractive and readable. However, I won't just restrict my comments to the presentation. I'm highly delighted that priority one, and our main priority, is Boston. Live, work and visit, an amazing place to live. And that draws together the things that make a place. A place that is great to visit will also be a great place in which to live. And it draws together the things that we have going for this town. And to pick up on Councillor Austin's point, as an independent borough, as an independent small district council, while that comes with challenges, as well we all know, it gives us a control over our destiny, which countless towns of a similar size of Boston would find themselves competing for resources with similar towns at the other end of a district. So having the privileges that we have with the Borough of Boston, I'm pleased to say we're making full use of them. And as other members that I've discussed this with and officers, the idea of Boston, a place to live, work and visit, is what I would love to see on the billboards across London, on the London Underground, advertised on the buses down there, because we have this utopia of ours here, where we have issues, we have concerns, we have problems, but 2 hours by rail north of King's Cross Station, we have this town of ours of which we're all rightly proud, which has fantastic grammar school education. It's in easy reach of the Wolds. It has the fens all around it. It has the coast, it has Frampton Marsh, it has beautiful countryside on three sides and the sea on the other. And somewhere to live and somewhere to work. We should never allow ourselves to be overcome by the occasional naysayers and doom mongers who do nothing more than concentrate on the negatives of our town. And I rejoice, Mr. Mayor, at your positivity, leading in the way that you do on selling the good points of our town. So I'm pleased that this is right here at priority number one in our corporate ambitions, in our corporate strategy. And I hope very much to that we can continue developing that. I'm pleased to see in there that we have things like the carbon reduction plan, which again is absolutely about getting the right balance between our corporate responsibilities of that we acknowledge in having declared a climate emergency, as well as our other responsibilities, which is to deliver good services for a good value to our local taxpayers. So I won't dwell any further, as I'm sure all members have the opportunity, same as myself, to have read this document, except to say there is some seriously good stuff in here, and I hope to continue, being able to give full support, as I'm sure I will, to this council, and hope to be here and over the coming years to see it all through to its conclusion. I genuinely applaud the efforts that have gone into putting together.
That's your 5 minutes, Councillor Ashton. Sorry.
Thank you very much. I'll conclude.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Goodale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to support this document. I must admit it covers basically the majority of the issues which we need to look for. I mean, I think the thing is, though, is what underpins these all the we wills and that are in each priority. I mean, we actually say we will do many things, which is great, and I wholeheartedly support them. But I do think that one of the things is what we underpin those, what the policies we have to underpin those, the we wills, if you like. Boston has many strengths, but I do think it's obviously clear to us all, and I'm not a doom monger or a naysayer or any of those things. I think Boston's a great place to live, and I love living here. But we all have to admit there are things which we need to do better and can do better, and this outlines a way forward to improve those things which we need to look at and the things we need to improve. The comments accompanying this document are very interesting. There are a number of things in there which, although some are negative, but we all know what the negative parts are, and they're the things we need to really improve. As long as go along with some of the more aspirational side of the town, which we are through the town board and one or two other promotions going on at the moment, actually looking really forward to a bright future for the town, with the Port of Boston and the town centre improvements and whatever. So there are lots of good things going on in the town, but it's really, this document is really the policies that underpin it that will count. But I'm totally happy with the document. I fully support it, and I just hope that we can basically fulfil all the promises or all the ambitions. Not promises, I'll rephrase it, all the ambitions that we have within this document. I hope we can fulfill them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goodale. We can, if we work together as a team, I think we can achieve all of these. Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak.
Oh.
I am fully behind this document, totally committed to it. The one thing that worries me, and it worries my residents, is the fact that our infrastructure is not there. They've been waiting for a bypass, my residents tell me, for 50 years. That's the biggest thing. Without the infrastructure in place, we're going nowhere. And I look, and I know that we did have a bypass party 2007, got elected on that standing 13 years later, and it's still not here. And I can say, I'm just wondering what our 5 county councillors have done. We're trying, with this in respect, to push this forward. I would like some information on that, because my residents are still fuming that this is not in place. We all get stuck in the traffic on that lovely so-called bypass that we've got that we know is not a bypass. So that's my only concern. But I want this document to take off. I really do. I not be here to see the fruition, but my grandchildren will be. So I will vote for this, and I really thank everybody that's concerned with it, putting it together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll get off the soap.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I totally agree with you, but I think we have to force the economy on the bypass. Then they're gonna bring it. Thank you, Councillor Evans.
I just wanted to say, fantastic. This is such good news. So excited about it. And I know the hard work that's gone into this, and I can imagine Councillor Welton's many late nights as well. And I want to say here to Councillor Tom Ashton, a man after my own heart. If we go forward with things like this, things like the bypass come along as a byproduct. If we just go for the bypass, why would they give us a bypass if we're not giving everything else to make everybody want to come and live here? So I think this is fantastic. I also support what Councillor Alison Austin said, some great things. And isn't it lovely to have something to get your teeth into and aim towards? So yes, fantastic. I'm so pleased about this, and I'm definitely supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Thank you. If there are no more speakers, then I will ask Councillor Welton to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's some really warming comments from all members tonight, and it's as Councillor Evans said, yeah, there has been a few late nights, but it's all been worth it. I was tasked with doing this many months ago, and it feels like I've given birth to it. It's like my child. It's like my baby. And as Councillor Austin said, there was lots of changes, and the bits at the beginning weren't quite right. You know, it couldn't walk, and it dribbled a bit, and you know, and I've seen it learn to walk, and I've seen it, you know, go to school, and I've seen it get better and better. And what I'm looking at now is an extremely well-rounded teenager. And if we look at it in that context, you are all the uncles and aunties of this document now, and it's up to you to make it to the end. It's up to you to nurture it. It's up to you to make sure that all the things that are in this happen. There's things in this document that will happen in this town where I'll be worm food. I'll be long gone, dead, buried when some of this comes in. But this is a start. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of a very, very long journey. And Councillor Goodale talked about what underpins it. This underpins everything. And it's Mr. Barlow and his team that have now been given a very, very clear direction of where us as a council, not Conservative or Labour or Independent or anything else, but us as a council that have all got together on this. We've all worked together. We've all put things together. We've all had time to mould it and make it to what it is now. And it's up to us as individuals and as a council to take this forward. And I'm going to close. I've already moved, but I'm going to close it on one statement, which is one of the first lines in the document. We want Boston to be a place where people want to live, a place where they can thrive in their local communities, feel safe, secure, healthy, and welcome. That's what we want for Boston. And on that note, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendations and encourage every single member of this council today and the future to take this and make it happen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Welton. And now we're going to go to the vote. Janet, can we please go to the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're voting on adopting the corporate strategy priorities for 2020-24 set out in the report. Could members indicate if they're for, against, or wish to abstain? Councillor Abbott?
For.
Councillor Ashton?
For.
Councillor Alison Austin?
For.
Councillor Richard Austin?
For.
Councillor Bedford?
For.
Councillor Bell?
For.
Councillor Cooper?
For.
Councillor Corner?
For.
Yourself, Mr. Mayor?
For.
Councillor Evans?
For.
Councillor Goodale?
For.
Councillor Griggs,
4,
Councillor Hasty,
4,
Councillor Howard,
4,
Councillor Noble,
4,
Councillor Pickett,
4,
Councillor Judith Skinner,
4,
Councillor Paul Skinner,
4,
Councillor Stevens,
4,
Councillor Watson,
4,
Councillor Wellborn,
4,
Councillor Welton,
Definite 4.
and Councillor Woodliff.
4.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you. Thank you. Well, the final item this evening is the annual scrutiny report 2019-2020. And I will ask Councillor Judith Skinner to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report has been approved unanimously by both scrutiny committees, so I do not intend to go through it in detail. I would like, however, to give a vote of thanks to Jeanette Collier and Karen Riss, the clerks of these committees, who have quickly picked up the new ways of working with Zoom, etc., and all that goes with it. This has enabled the committees to carry on their work in this difficult time. I am sure my fellow councillors will join me in this. I therefore move that the Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report for 2019-20 be approved for publication. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, you're muted.
Yes, yes, Councillor Woodliff. Thank you.
I'm down to second this, so
Thank you.
I will second.
Okay.
Second the proposal presented by Councillor Judith Skinner.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Woodliff. So we have a proposal and we have seconded. Does anybody wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Wellborn's indicating.
Oh, yes, Councillor Wellborn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Lady in red.
Thank you. As part of the E&P and my first task and finish, I think that both scrutinies have done an excellent job this year. It is an experience that I would love all councillors to take part in as to doing a scrutiny. The things you have to find out, the things you have to examine are fantastic. But I would like to put a proposal of a motion to go with this scrutiny report tonight, and that is to lobby our MP and government in regard to revoking the licences of premises that are found guilty of illegal trading. At present, they can continue to trade until an appeal or a payment of fine is paid. I think this should really be changed, and I think this is something the public would like to see, and was touched upon earlier in the licensing report. But yeah, it's an excellent report, and thank you to both people who participated and to the officers who helped. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wellborn. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was simply going to add my word of support for the report that we have before us. And I will also add my support to the vote of thanks to both Karen Riss and Jeanette Collier as the committee clerks. And I would add, as this is again our last meeting of the full council before the end of the year, and my only opportunity to do this is that as serving chairman of Audit and Governance, add my own personal thanks to Jeanette for her work as committee clerk, and over my short time on audit and governance as chairman, over my time as vice chairman, and over my time as a humble councillor serving on the various committees. Your help and guidance has been continually invaluable, and we will miss it tremendously. But thank you so much from me, and that's all I really got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. We have Councillor Paul Skinner. You took your hand off? Or are you wishing to speak, Councillor Paul Skinner?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. There's been some fantastic jobs done by all of our scrutiny panels this last 12 months or so, or it seems longer. It's not even 12 months, but they've done some really good pieces of work. I've and other portfolio holders have actually tried to contribute it, but we'd be nothing if it wasn't for the work of Jeanette and Karen, our clerks. They absolutely make this process work. We've got some of the best scrutinies in our council. Fantastic. And picking up on what Councillor Wellborn said, we will be petitioning where we can to move things where we can. We do take seriously, members of the executive do take seriously things that are brought to us by scrutiny. So thank you very much, Jeanette. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much, scrutiny chairs. That's both Stephen and Judy. Both very independent, and that's the way it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be a little bit sneaky, if I may. As portfolio holder for Democratic Services, I want to say two things to Jeanette. One, you will be sadly missed, and two, enjoy yourself. Thank you.
We're going to get Giles here. We all would like to retire one day. Councillor Alison Austin. Councillor,
I don't know if it would be out of order, Mr. Mayor, but either before or after the vote, could we perhaps show our appreciation to Jeanette Collier? We all have our reactions.
Of course.
And I think it shows a clapping hand, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. I wasn't going to let it go without doing that. Thank you, Councillor Austin. So if there is no more speakers, I will ask Councillor Judith Skinner to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think there's a lot more to say to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Janet, can we hold the vote, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. I'll read out the names. If you could say whether you're for or against or wish to abstain on the adoption of the annual scrutiny report. Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Ashton.
For.
Councillor Alison Austin.
For.
Councillor Richard Austin.
For.
Councillor Bedford.
For.
Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Corner.
For.
Councillor yourself, Mr. Mayor.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Goodale.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Griggs.
For.
Councillor Hasty. Councillor Howard.
For.
Councillor Noble.
For.
Councillor Pickett. Councillor Pickett.
He's muted. We come back later to him, probably.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pickett. Councillor Judith Skinner.
For.
Councillor Paul Skinner.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Wellborn.
For.
Councillor Welton.
For.
And Councillor Woodliff.
For.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's carried. Thank you. Just before we're gonna go, I want to show to everyone the photo which is I had with you. I think they might like it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank
I
you all
still
very
keep
much
it.
for all those kind words. I really appreciate it. Thank you
What I
very
will
much.
do, if anybody want to pop in and just put a good word for Janet, that will be appreciated. You can raise your hands or you can do, the way you want it. Does anybody wish to speak or anybody want to say anything? Clap hands. You can clap hands. If you put reactions, if you go to reactions, you can put clap hands on your faces.
Wow, that's really lovely.
Thank you very much, Janet.
That says it all. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
You've been a very kind person. We really, I will miss you. We will miss you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
indeed.
And with that concludes the formal business of this meeting. And I thank you for your attendance. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Thank you, Janet, and have a lovely, lovely time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Anton.
Good night, everybody. Good
Thank
night.
you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr. Mayor.
everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.